Joanna Macy is the teacher we're going to focus on today, and she is an absolute gift to the world, in part because she loves it so much. And she's a Buddhist scholar, and she is a deep ecologist. And she has a little bridge of like translating Rilke poems in between. But she's been super active for more than 50 years in her profound spirituality around earth and ecology and life. And then there's that Buddhist piece of our own psychology and how we're meeting it. So she's terrific. I heard of her first through the prophecy she received from one of her Buddhist teachers about the Shambala Warriors. And the prophecy was, and I'll put a link to it below so that you can hear her tell it, but that in the time when we could destroy ourselves and that fear and anger were dominant, there would arise the Shambhala Warriors. And the Shambhala Warriors would have no country. They would be everywhere. And they would be trained in the weapons of insight and compassion. And with these weapons, they would dismantle the structures of fear that have provided the engine for anger and greed. And in one of the tellings, she says, her son says, well, do they win? And she's like, hey, man, that's not the way prophecies work. They don't tell us what happened. We get to make what happens. And I don't know where that fell in the timeline of her work, but she has certainly done everything in her power to cultivate the Shambhala Warriors and the world of connection and life-supporting activity. I really loved the Shambhala Warrior story because I kind of feel like I'm trying to find the place where people like me lived, right? Like people who were spiritually oriented and ecology oriented and, just a little off mainstream. I don't know. I've never been able to get real community. And most of the people, like my Tai Chi teacher, different people, like, how come we can't coalesce as a group and, have a society that works, like a little micro society that cares about each other and is operating a little differently from the industrial growth-based society. And then the prophecy made me realize, oh wait, no, we need to be flowers in every garden. We need to pop up everywhere and hold insight and compassion in wildly diverse circumstances, if we're really going to dismantle the structures that threaten our very existence. So anyway, I don't know if I explained why I love that prophecy so much, but I really do. And if you're watching this, I'm sure you're a Shambhala warrior. And our role is important. And Joanna Macy gives us a really nice context and really helpful tools to take the work forward. So the context, as she calls it, the great turning, that this moment in history is what the future will look back on as one of the most important moments, because we're at this time where like there's always been like the end is nigh, but right now we have, for the first time in all of our evolutionary history, the capacity to destroy ourselves. Like nuclear bombs did that for us, and then like we've just taken the train on how many different ways of environmental collapse we've been like just driving towards. And she posits that this is an existential burden on each of us, whether or not we're cognizant of it. Just the fact that as a species, this is kind of the level of activity that we're in. It's a crisis that no prior generation has had to encounter. So this choice point between the benefits of, or perceived benefits of, constant environmental growth, or the restoration of connected, life-sustaining civilization. How do we do that? She has 3 pillars. The first is holding actions. Get out in the streets, speak truth to power, demand that your values be heard. The second is changing structures. And she quotes Buckminster Fuller that you don't go in and try to fix a structure that doesn't work. You create a structure that does work that makes this one obsolete. And then the third pillar of the Great Turning is shifting consciousness. And I would have to imagine it's somewhat gratifying over the course of her career to see that there is a shift in consciousness, perhaps not as quickly as we'd like it to be, but decidedly, there are decided momentum in the shift in consciousness. And what I love is I think that the 3 pillars of the Great Turning are like a recycle symbol, because if you get out there and speak and stand up for what you value, we do start to change the structures that have been kind of driving us off a cliff. And we contribute to the shift in consciousness of others. And as we contribute to that, we develop our own shift in consciousness ever deeper. And as we develop our own consciousness ever deeper, our actions, we can have these macro actions where we go out and say it, and then we start to notice the micro actions where things that we didn't even know we were doing that are supporting and contributing to an industrial growth complex, and we want to redirect that. And that as we redirect that, whether it's how we spend our money or how we spend our time or energy, then the structures that we used to be supporting that we now have divested of, we're participating in that structural change that's then going to continue that shift in consciousness. So it's really beautiful, virtuous. I don't see it as a circle, as I see it as a recycling symbol. But that's kind of this kind of grand view of how this great turning is turning. But at the more personal level, and kind of where the Buddhism and environmentalism really come in together, her work called The Work That Reconnects is super beautiful. And we'll lay it out just with, because you can use it with anything, which is really nice. And we can use it individually. And it's also meant for group work. And she's shared it around the world. And there are teachers of it around the world. But it begins with gratitude. Because anytime we are in an existential crisis, it's because something we love is being threatened. So the first step is come into what it is that we love, that we don't want to see threatened, and be grateful that we've had it in our lives, that we have it in our lives, that we have this love that we want to defend. So come into the love and be grateful. What is it? And really sense into what it is you love. The second step of the work that reconnects is grief. And it's grief over that threat. This threat is happening and to something you love. And what does that feel like? You know, often we want to go straight to anger. But when we do that, we miss an opportunity. And actually, the opportunity is what she lays out here. So when we get in touch with our grief and we honor our grief and we respect our grief, we can begin the third step, which is seeing with new eyes. Because the eyes of anger and the eyes of grief are going to have 2 different entry points to how to move forward. And seeing with new eyes, opening up to being in relationship to the thing that we love as our primary relationship, allows us to move forward with something new, move forward with, we go forth into the actions that call us from our love, right? Because sometimes there's a dynamic of this tender thing that I love is being threatened. I'm going to jump up out of myself and be in relationship with the thing that's threatening it. And that's not the best mechanism. Coming into relationship with what we love, recognizing the grief of its threat, but staying in that relatedness, then we can perhaps meet solutions that we couldn't find any other way. Anyway, she calls this a spiral because then as we go forth, we may, so it's start with gratitude, hold the grief tenderly, see with new eyes, and then go forth. And as you go forth, you may find new things that you have to bring into the cycle. It's super powerful work. And it's what I love about it is it meets the fullness of our challenge. And in doing so, it feels to me that it's addressing a systemic shift and not just the kind of perpetual band-aids that we seem as a society to like be trying to slap on things, and that's really falling apart because that shift in consciousness truly is happening. And I believe again that we have Joanna Macy to thank for the depth of the tectonic plates between industrial growth and real real life supportive civilization are meeting. And I think this one is going under that one. It's, it might be a slow motion, but it's essential. And may we all continue on this spiral of meeting the truth of this moment and what it evokes in us, the way that we meet it within ourselves strengthens and makes more effective the way we meet it outside of ourselves. And may we all be Shambhala warriors, wielding insight and compassion to dismantle the structures of fear and build a world that works for everyone. I'm very grateful for Joanna Macy, and her books are beautiful, and her interviews online are terrific. She's been prolific and active for a really long time, so I don't think you'll have any trouble finding out more about her if you're so interested. And of course, I will put some links below. And thank you very much for listening to me talk about Joanna Macy, who I love. Thanks.